Okay, how's everybody doing? Of course, my name is Kent. Channel is Bitcoin Believer, and I want to talk a little bit about. We're coming toward the end of the year. Year's almost over with. It'll be over with here in just about a month, a little over a month. So I want to talk about what I think is going to happen in the next year with 2024. Of course, we're going to have an election, which is going to be a big thing. So I don't think anything too drastic is going to happen in 2024. But I do think there's going to be some things that you need to keep an eye on. And one of the things I think that's going to happen here very soon is everybody's talking about the dollar. The dollar is going to go away. The dollar is going to be taken over because of the BRICS nations, and the dollar is going to be, we're going to hyperinflate, and no one's going to use dollars anymore, and all that other stuff. I think that's incredibly nearsighted. I don't think that's exactly what's going to happen. I would say probably more likely to happen is we're going to have some sort of I wouldn't say hyperinflation, but we're going to have a lot of inflation in this economy next year. 2024 is going to be a very inflationary year, and because of the politics involved, you got a presidential campaign coming up. Nobody's going to want to make financial cuts. You got some promises in a couple proxy wars going on, Israel, Ukraine. Nobody wants to back off on those, especially people have interest in those particular issues. And of course you're not going to want to see the economy drop off too much, so you're going to continue to give stimulus to everything in the world to try to keep things pumped up. Keep the stock market pumped up, keep everything pumped up. So why we're going through this, basically, the dollar crashes. Well, everything's getting more expensive. Actually, they call it a kind of a reverse crash. Instead of things depressing, usually when you think crash, prices go down. But this is going to be crash, well, prices are going up higher. And that's what's going to happen. We're going to literally end up in this inflationary spiral upward, so that everything's going to be crashing, but things are going to be more expensive. Some people are going to be more wealthy, although the wealth is not going to be nearly as much, because the dollar isn't going to have as much value. So even though you're going to have millions and millions of dollars in the bank, it's not going to buy much. So that's the direction we're going. We're going into a crash as things get more expensive and things become higher priced. And that's why I always have, for a number of years, believed in Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the only thing that has a fixed supply. 21 million. 21 million will be, the only coins that will ever exist in this world today are 21 million, and they're all entirely mined. They haven't all entirely mined. So they're fixed. Even gold is not fixed. We don't even know, people don't know how much gold is being mined around the world. We don't know how much gold still exists in the world. We don't know. Maybe with all the new technologies coming out, artificial intelligence and all this stuff, they're able to discover gold mines that we've never thought existed before. So any kind of commodity, any kind of a material like gold or silver and like that, you can't really trust supplies. We don't know. We don't know what's out there yet. We don't know what's to be found. We don't know how much oil is in the ground. I've heard people talk about Prudhoe Bay, Alaska, how there's more oil reserves in Prudhoe Bay, Alaska than we will ever use in the history of the world, that they just capped off and left, but they know it's there. I've heard that argument so many times, and you can see this kind of stuff. And I agree with that. I think there is more oil than they tell us. They can continually tell us stuff like, well, we're running out of oil. Well, they told us that in the 70s. And I remember the 70s oil embargo, where you had to line up at filling stations to get your car filled. We didn't have that problem on the farm because we had bulk fuel, but I remember watching the newscasts that people were lining up to get their cars filled, and the oil prices were spiraling. They're going crazy. They're going up like crazy. And of course, here we are, 40, 50 years later, and we still got, everybody's driving around in the big SUVs and the four-wheel drives and stuff like that. So yeah, things, I don't believe in commodities. I never have. I grew up on a farm. Commodities, anything, it's a commodity that can be mass-produced or overproduced or isn't have any uniqueness about it. A bushel of corn grown in Iowa is the same bushel of corn grown in Argentina, and there's no difference. It's just, as long as it's corn, it's corn. So those commodities that don't have any uniqueness to them, you'll never ever see much. value in them, and that's why people are talking about, oh, we need you invest in commodities, invest in farmland, or invest in this and invest in that. You know, I just don't buy it. I mean, I think Bitcoin is probably the greatest, most unique thing you can put your money into, and it's been historically very valuable, and it continues to be valuable, and it continues to go up in price, as we've seen here recently. So Bitcoin is the play, and if you're out there and you're struggling with trading your time for money, and it isn't working out so well, you got to find something to create some appreciation. And of course, I think if someone can put together a little bit of money and put it in Bitcoin, you got an opportunity to get ahead of the game. Outside of that, you're going to be struggling. And, you know, I remember when I was a kid, back on the farm, you know, the salaries used to be, I mean, I remember my parents used to hire farm labor, and generally I remember the price was always about $5 an hour. You know, that was what they paid, and this is in the 70s, 80s, probably more 70s and 80s, but $5 an hour was pretty much a standard wage for what they paid an hourly employee. And then my mom always said, you know, like $1,000 a month is about what, you know, their limit for paying people was about $5 an hour, $1,000 a month. So here we are, we're 2023, that was a long time ago, probably 50 years ago. And here we are today, and what is the minimum wage in California? $15 an hour. You know, what do people make? They still make probably $50,000, $60,000 a year on probably average. You know, and that hasn't kept up with what how prices have gone up. And to make a comparison, look at what the price of a vehicle was back in when people were being paid $5 an hour. You could buy a new car for $3,000 or $4,000. I mean, I remember my first car, I think, was $4,000, $3,500, and it was a year old when I got it, but it was a Dodge Charger. You know, it was a nice car. I wish I still had it, but you know, it was a pretty new year-old Dodge Charger. I think we got it in '76, and it was a 72. But it was, you know, it wasn't that old, 4 years old. But you know, we paid, maybe we didn't pay that much, but it was a pretty special car. And there was a few other things involved with that car that made it a little bit more expensive. But yeah, you could buy a car for under $5,000. So today, you want to go out and buy a car. I mean, you want to buy a nice car, you're going to spend $150,000. If you want to buy just an average car, you're probably going to spend $50,000. And if you want to buy something kind of in the middle there, you're about $125,000. So, and especially, I'd like that same thing with farm equipment. Look at farm equipment. New tractor is $1 million, $500,000, maybe not quite $1 million, but $500,000. New combine's $500,000. So prices have gone up more than what people have gotten for trading their time for their time for money. So if you're working at a job and you're just making a wage, it doesn't work. It doesn't work out. It just hasn't worked for a long, long time. And the government lies to us about the inflation. They'll tell you there has been 2% inflation or not much inflation, but they're basing that on things like commodities or like food. And of course, food is not a good indicator of the price of things because they subsidize food. Every farmer, and I was involved with farming way back when they started the subsidy program, the PIC program is what they called it. So farmers aren't making a living. Their input costs are way more than what they're getting for the commodities on the open market. It's what the granaries and the elevators are willing to pay us for our commodities. So in comes the government. Set aside programs. Set aside some of your acres and we'll pay you to set that aside, put it in the PIC program and stuff like that. So what farmers started doing, they got pretty clever and they started figuring out how to make money on these programs. I mean, these programs, you know, we called it farming the government. You can farm the government and make money. That's what we're talking about. Back in the day when I was farming, that's in the 70s and 80s. So in the early 90s, yeah, we were farming the government back then. I can imagine what the guys are doing now. So yeah, you really can't base, you know, the consumer price index of food on how much food has gone up. Even though food has gone up a lot, it still hasn't gone up as much as it should have if the government wasn't subsidizing farmers. So we're having this reverse crash where things are getting more expensive, things are getting higher priced. There's nothing out there to keep up with that unless you find something like a Bitcoin or maybe some real estate, but real estate's fairly not very liquid, and maybe a few other things out there too, but Bitcoin is the primary thing that most people are going to be involved with. And of course, I made a video today about the fact that ETFs are really kind of already existing by the fact you can buy MicroStrategies or you can buy Coinbase today, and they hold a lot of Bitcoin. And I'm not too worried about the Security Exchange Commission and how sometimes they rattle their sword against Bitcoin, or we don't know if they're going to do it today or we're going to do it tomorrow or next week. We don't know, but they will do it. I mean, BlackRock's got I think BlackRock, I can't remember what the numbers were, but they have a staggering amount of ETFs that have been successful. And it would be almost mind-boggling if this didn't happen. And then we have the halving, which is coming up very quickly, very, very soon next year we'll have the halving. And then on top of that, we've got an election year with massive price increases in everything. Everything is going to be continued to, just like what you got a new Speaker of the House. What does that guy do? He tells everybody how he's going to not give any money to Ukraine. He's not going to do this, not going to do that. What's the guy do? The first bill he passes is an extension on the budget. We're not going to shut the government down. We're just going to have a short-term budget increase, and that's what he's doing. He's just going to push the can. How you doing? Just push the can. How you doing? Push the can down there. I'm in Carlsbad, California. If you know, I'm on State Street actually. We're across from Barrow Republic. I remember during the pandemic, this thing was completely shut down. But it's kind of lively, and it's not cold out. I'm just in a jacket because I got out of the gym, and when I get out of the gym, sometimes I get a little chill. But it's not cold here. It's probably about 60, 65 degrees. So don't make you think the jacket makes you think, because it's not cold. It's actually fairly warm. I could be in my shirt sleeves right now and be very comfortable. So yeah, we got massive inflation coming. Bitcoin looking very strong, especially with the halving and all that good stuff coming up. And don't buy into all the bad news about the dollar. There's actually $2 in the world. There's our domestic dollar, which is being inflated crazily. And then we have the international dollar. And the thing about the dollar, why people can't give up on the dollar or think that the dollar is going to go away, is because even though the dollar is bad, it's been hyperinflated. It's being inflated every day, even more than we even know. It's still the best of all the rest of what's out there. So I was watching this YouTube video in Argentina, and they don't want to hold their currency because it's so bad that they actually trade for dollars, and they want to hold the dollar. So we got people around the world that are using the dollar in place of their currency, because the dollar is more stable than the currency they have. And you have this underground system, or you have this the system of people around the world holding dollars, believing in the dollar more than they believe in their own currency, especially if you're in a place like Argentina. So you have this whole secondary world that uses the dollar, that keeps the dollar strong. And there's two, like I said, there's an international dollar, a domestic dollar. International dollar is strong, and it will continue to be strong, because people will always accept it and take it because it's used universally throughout the world. It's one of the few things we have in this United States of America that's been very, very helpful for our standard of living, is to have the world currency be the dollar. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But it will change in its in the way it's in its design. And its design, it will be a currency that will be switched to digital. And I think the way they'll make it into a digital currency is that it will, when people start to get behind and they can't make their payments, and they don't want to have massive foreclosures, they don't want the real estate market to crash, they're going to start injecting digital money into your wallet, into your digital wallet that you already have, and you had back in the days of the pandemic. You had a digital wallet, and they're going to start injecting money into your digital wallet, and they're going to start getting people used to using that. And people are going to use it. Not too many people like digital money, because they don't understand it, for one thing, and secondly, they don't trust it, and thirdly, they think that the government's in their business, which is all true. But they're going to use it because they're going to be forced to, because they have nothing else. Because inflation is going to cause everything to be so expensive that basically everybody, except for maybe those very few elite people, will never have to worry about it. But most of us are going to have to, one day, as this thing starts to come into play, we're all going to have to fall under the digital dollar, because we're going to be forced to, because we just simply cannot keep up with the rising prices that are about ready to take place. So we're going to all capitulate and eventually use their digital dollar as they give us dollars. And as they give us dollars, they'll start to take away more of our freedom and more of our livelihoods, and start to control us. We'll have a social score and all that good stuff. But the bottom line is, people will continue to have a place to live, and they'll continue to have something to eat, which is pretty important. Because when I start watching videos of how other people live around the world, we live pretty well in the United States. I watched videos about some of it's a lot of travel. I like to watch travel videos. I don't know why, especially travel videos and people in other parts of the world that I've never been to before. And when I start to see the way people live in some of the outlying regions of Russia or Kazakhstan or even some of the places in Africa, the way people have to live, the standard of living they have, we're pretty fortunate in the United States of America to have the high standard of living that we have, especially in a place like California. I mean, it's a very high style of living. So, I'm very blessed to be here. And if you live in America, you should feel blessed because it's pretty bad in other places around the world. So we're very fortunate. I'm very happy for that. And I realize that, not seeing people hungry on the streets and not really seeing. In fact, in our area, we don't have that many homeless. I think most people have a home around our area. They keep it pretty clean around here, actually. In Carlsbad, California, you don't see. I mean, my daughter lives up in L.A. and that's a little different up there. But here, it's pretty well kept. So, yeah, it's pretty nice. Pretty nice place to be. I appreciate you watching. Thank you.